The architectural history of Amsterdam. Amsterdam's architectural history is inseparable from its geography, economy, and social values. Built on marshland at the mouth of the Amstel River, the city developed not through monumental grandeur alone, but through careful engineering, pragmatic urban planning, and a deep concern for collective life. From its medieval origins to contemporary experimental architecture, Amsterdam's built environment reflects centuries of adaptation, trade, tolerance, and innovation. Medieval foundations, 13th to 15th centuries. Amsterdam began as a small fishing settlement in the late 12th century, centered around a dam built across the Amstel River, an infrastructure project that gave the city its name. Early architecture was modest and functional, dominated by wooden houses, warehouses, and defensive structures. Because of construction posed a serious fire risk, devastating fires in the 14th century led to new regulations encouraging the use of brick and stone. Gothic architecture became prominent during this period, particularly in religious and civic buildings. The Oude Kerk, Old Church, begun in the early 14th century, is the city's oldest surviving building and a prime example of brick Gothic architecture. Its restrained ornamentation and emphasis on verticality reflect both Northern European Gothic traditions and Amsterdam's pragmatic character. Unlike the monumental cathedrals of France, Amsterdam's medieval buildings were functional, durable, and closely tied to daily urban life. The Dutch Golden Age and Canal Ring, 17th century. Amsterdam's architectural identity was most decisively shaped during the 17th century, the Dutch Golden Age. As global trade expanded through the Dutch East India Company, Amsterdam became one of the richest cities in the world. This prosperity transformed the city's urban form, most notably through construction of the famous canal ring Grachtengordel, now a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The canal system was both an engineering feat and a planning triumph. Designed in concentric arcs around the old city, the canals combined water management, transportation, and residential development. Architecture along the canals followed a consistent yet flexible model. Narrow, tall canal houses with gable facades, large windows, and hoisting beams for goods. Their verticality was dictated by high land costs and taxation based on facade width. Architectural styles during this period favored Dutch classicism, restrained, symmetrical, and inspired by Renaissance ideals rather than Baroque extravagance. Architects such as Hendrik de Keyser played a crucial role in shaping the city's civic architecture. Buildings like the Westerkerk and the Royal Palace, originally Amsterdam City Hall, demonstrate a sober monumentalism, emphasizing proportion, order, and civic pride rather than royal authority. Importantly, Amsterdam's Golden Age architecture reflected bourgeois values. Wealth was expressed through refinement and craftsmanship rather than excess. This ethos produced a cohesive urban landscape that remains one of the most admired in Europe. Decline, adaptation, and neoclassicism, 18th, early 19th century. The 18th century brought economic stagnation and reduced architectural innovation. While few large-scale projects were undertaken, existing buildings were adapted and embellished. Neoclassicism gained influence, particularly in interiors and facades, reflecting Enlightenment ideals of rationality and balance. During the early 19th century, under French rule and later the Kingdom of the Netherlands, Amsterdam saw renewed state-led construction. Infrastructure improvements, bridges, and institutional buildings were developed, often in a restrained neoclassical style. However, the city largely preserved its historic core, avoiding the radical demolition seen in cities like Paris. Industrialization and expansion, late 19th century. Industrialization transformed Amsterdam in the late 19th century, prompting rapid population growth and urban expansion beyond the historic canal belt. New neighborhoods were developed to house workers and the emerging middle class, often following rational grid patterns. Architectural styles during this period were eclectic. Neo-Gothic, Neo-Renaissance, and Art Nouveau, known locally as Jugendstil, appeared in residential buildings, schools, and railway stations. One of the most significant architects of this era was Pierre Cuypers, whose Rijksmuseum and Amsterdam Central Station combined Gothic and Renaissance elements with modern engineering techniques. Though controversial at the time, these buildings became enduring symbols of the city. The Amsterdam School and Social Housing, early 20th century. One of Amsterdam's most distinctive architectural movements emerged in the early 20th century, the Amsterdam School. Closely associated with social democratic ideals, this expressionist style emphasized sculptural brickwork, organic forms, and decorative detail. Architects such as Michel de Clercq believed architecture should uplift everyday life, particularly for working-class residents. The movement coincided with ambitious social housing programs, resulting in beautifully designed housing blocks that treated workers' homes with the same care as elite buildings. The Het Schip housing complex remains the most famous example, showcasing how architecture, social policy, and craftsmanship were integrated into a cohesive vision. Post-war modernism and urban critique, mid-20th century. After World War II, Amsterdam faced housing shortages and reconstruction challenges. Modernist principles, functionalism, standardization, and separation of uses guided much post-war development. Large-scale housing estates and office buildings were constructed, particularly in peripheral areas. However, by the 1960s and 1970s, public resistance grew against car-oriented planning and impersonal modernism. Grassroots movements successfully halted highway projects and preserved historic neighborhoods. This period marked a renewed appreciation for human-scale architecture and historic continuity. Contemporary architecture and innovation, late 20th to 21st century. In recent decades, Amsterdam has emerged as a center for architectural experimentation. Contemporary architecture in the city balances innovation with respect for historical context. Projects such as the Film Museum, the Nemo Science Museum, and new residential developments in the Eastern Docklands demonstrate bold forms, sustainable technologies, and creative use of waterfront sites. Sustainability and adaptive reuse are now central to Amsterdam's architectural culture. Former warehouses, shipyards, and industrial buildings have been transformed into housing, cultural spaces, and offices. This approach reflects a long-standing tradition, building not by erasing the past, but by reinterpreting it. Conclusion: Amsterdam's architecture tells a story of continuity and change shaped by water, trade, and social values. From medieval brick churches to elegant canal houses, from expressionist social housing to contemporary sustainable design, the city's built environment reflects a deeply human approach to architecture, practical yet expressive, restrained yet innovative. Rather than pursuing architectural spectacle alone, Amsterdam has consistently prioritized livability, civic identity, and thoughtful urban integration, making it one of the most architecturally coherent and admired cities in the world.